Hello, my name is Alpa and welcome to another episode of me over-explaining my plugins. In this video we are going to take a look at a new version of Clips, a Clipper plugin I developed in collaboration with Integer Audio. This new version 2.0 fixes multiple workflow related issues as well as improves the visuals, especially the oscilloscope. Without further ado, let's get right to it. Okay, and here we are. I bet you were surprised that I didn't use my usual hi in the intro, but instead used hello. Anyway, here is Clips version 2.0. As you can see, it's quite different than the previous version. I have an image of the previous one here. So as you can see, it's much cleaner in my opinion. The big changes are down here with the oscilloscope and also with the multiband section. I'll walk you through the changes and new features first, and then I will show you a sound example with this project here and also a new thing you can do with this new version 2.0. So yeah. Okay, so let's start with the settings screen here. So previously you only had a day and night mode buttons here, so you could change the colors. I decided to move on to the classic 6th sample menu screen because this is much more useful for selecting different things, and here you can also check for updates, and there's also a link directly to the bug report page if you find any bugs and would like to report them. I really appreciate it if you do. So okay, so there are now 10 themes instead of the 2 in the previous version, and maybe I will show you first the themes. To the left here, I have rearranged the main sliders. So previously they were in 2 columns. In this new version, they are horizontally in 2 rows. And with this new space, I also included a description text here for these modes. It's not that it's like super informative, but it fills the space quite nicely and it gives you some information about the different modes. Also, the threshold slider, as you can see, if you remember what the previous version looked like, it's a little bit different. And you can see also that the threshold value is displayed here in the middle, so it's not next to the threshold slider itself anymore. Okay, then let's move on to the big change in this new version, which is the multiband section. Previously you only could choose between a multiband mode and a single band mode, so you kind of had to make a decision: do I need 3 bands or can I do with just processing the whole signal? So in this new version I decided to kind of combine the 2 modes, so the single band and the multiband mode. So here, if you turn on the multiband stage, it's called, you now have a multiband processor either before or after the single band stage, and it's much more flexible in this way to process sound. And this is something that I kind of regretted that we didn't put on the initial version, because I don't know, maybe we didn't think about that then. But then after I kind of worked with the plugin with multiple projects and sounds, I kind of realized that something like this would have been a great addition. And here it is in the version 2.0. So okay, when you first turn on the multiband stage, it has selected the low band for you. So you can change the band by selecting the frequency range in this spectrum analyzer here. You can see if I play some sounds, you can see that it's working here. And to change the main stage settings, as you can see here, maybe you won't because it's like really small text. Tweak main stage settings by unselecting bands above. So this means if you click the band you have selected, you are now back to the single band stage that you had before you turned on the multiband stage. So here you can see it says post MB, which means multiband. And that means that it's like processed after the multiband stage. So by default, the multiband stage is before the single band stage. This is just because usually you might want to clip the signal at the end of the processing, so you can kind of use the single band stage only for like simple clipping or compression. But you can also switch it so that the multiband stage is after the single band stage. Then also new to this version, you can also change the multiband crossover filter's slope So 24 decibels per octave is default, and a little bit less deep is 12 decibels per octave. And then also you have the option for a linear phase filter, and this is fantastic for parallel processing, or if you want to keep the sound exactly the same, especially now that we have the two stages. So after you have kind of processed the multiband, it can offset the frequencies in a way that the clipping doesn't sound the same anymore. So if you just turn on linear phase, the multiband stage will not offset the band frequencies relative to each other. It will just kind of keep everything in line. This does introduce some latency, but that's kind of the trade-off with linear phase. Then you have the usual input and output volumes here. These were in the previous version of Clips as well. They were also these horizontal circle sliders right here. So those are gone, and now it's simple drag up and down to kind of see the decibel value directly, and this also saves some space from the UI. This button here is the auto gain for the output, so if you turn up the input, it will kind of automatically turn down the output to compensate, and you won't hear any volume difference. This way you can kind of drive the input into the processor and get more clipping or more compression if you are working with sounds that are mixed way down in the decibel range. And then we have the maximize button. This is the same as this very confusing button in the old version, out equals the seal. So that just means when you turn down the ceiling, it will boost the output volume with that amount of decibels. So okay, minus 8.5, for example, with the threshold, it will boost the output plus 8.5 decibels. So you can essentially use this as a maximizer as well. And then down here we have the solo, mute and bypass buttons. The mute button is not available for the single band mode. This is just because it's kind of confusing to mute the single band stage, because you will just mute the whole signal and you won't hear anything. So I just disabled it for the single band stage to prevent any confusion. And then also in the old version we had copy, paste and reset buttons for the individual bands or the single band stage. So with these you can really easily copy settings between stages. So right now we are in the full single stage post multiband, and if I do some changes here and press copy and go, for example, to the midband, I can paste the settings here and you have the exact same things. And if I just press out of that, it's the same. And one more thing I want to mention about the multiband section is that I also, as in the flatter version 2.0, I updated the spectrum analyzer, so it's not the same as in the previous version anymore. It's much more accurate and also takes less CPU power, so you can maybe boost the frame rate a little bit more. Well, there are not many options, but still. So yeah, so it's also tilted 4.5 degrees around 1000 Hertz. And this is to display you more accurately how balanced your frequencies are. And then we come to the section that I'm most proud of, or that I'm most pleased with in this new version, and that is the oscilloscope down here. In the previous version, the oscilloscope wasn't really that good, to be honest. It had this kind of weird overlay effect with the input and output signals, and if you kind of boosted the output, you might have a hard time seeing the difference, and yeah, it wasn't the greatest, to be honest. So I really wanted to make it better, and that was actually one of the main motivations why I did a 2.0 update for this plugin. So I wanted to change the oscilloscope, and here we are, and I must say it's like 1000 times better than in the previous version. I'm really pleased with it, and if I maybe play you the drums again, you can see that it's like much better to see the difference when you, for example, are clipping the sound. Right now you only see either the output or input signals one at a time, so you cannot overlay them. by pressing this button here. You can switch between them, but this is actually not a problem. You can just kind of bypass the processing and you immediately see the difference in the oscilloscope. And this is also due to the fact that this version has a static oscilloscope. So in the previous version, the waveform was kind of scrolling through the UI. But here it's staying static for like maybe 1 beat or 1 bar. And this you can, the length you can change down here using these buttons. So the default one I think is 1 beat, and then you can change it to 2 beats, 1 bar, 2 bars, 4 bars, and 8 bars is the maximum. And it kind of always stays in grid. And with this, you can really easily see the difference, because if the sound doesn't change, the oscilloscope doesn't change either. And as soon as you change something from the sound, you can immediately see the change in the oscilloscope down here. So, okay, I'll just play the drums and play around with the threshold and whatnot, and you can see how it's much better than in the previous version of Clips. Okay, then the last thing I have left here is the master sliders down here on the bottom right corner. So these actually, believe it or not, was also not in the previous version. So you only had the input and output volumes, for example, for the separate bands or the single band mode, but not for the whole thing. So you couldn't change, for example, the master output volume if you used the multiband mode, because you could only use the sliders in the separate bands. And also you didn't have a mix slider at all. So those are now all here. And also I moved the oversampling button down here, so it's not confusing in here with multiband stuff. So with the new version, it's down here in the master section. I think it kind of makes a lot more sense. So that's it for the overview of the plugin. Now I'll show you a couple of things that you can do with this new version. Okay, here I have an example. In this first instance, I used the multiband stage before the single band stage here. So this is just to control the volumes of the different bands. So this kind of acts like an EQ or a linear phase EQ. So the only thing that I did is lower the volume of the low band by 2.5 decibels and boosted the high bands for 3.5 decibels. And this is just because I noticed that my track had a kind of wrong balance. So I had a lot more low end than high end. And this is actually an issue for me. Usually when I'm mixing, I'm not sure if it's for everyone else, but this is what I've noticed. So usually my low end is too high. So only after this, I used the single band mode. I used the single band mode for maximizing. So here I used the clip mode and just dragged down the threshold to 15 decibels. I actually used the preset here. And after that, I tweaked the multiband stage. So it's using the maximize feature, and this is just for maximizing. Also, I boosted the input for 3 decibels because for some reason I mix in ridiculously low volumes. I don't know why. Okay, and then the other instance is completely the same, but just without the multiband stage. So this instance doesn't control the low band and high band volumes at all. So I'll play you this section of the track here and you can clearly hear the difference. So first I'll play you the track with the instance without the volume controlling. And then with the multiband stage. Much more clear and doesn't clip nearly as much as the version without the multiband stage, just mainly because I removed some of the low end before doing the maximizing. So yeah, that's like really cool thing you couldn't do with the previous version of clips, and now it's possible with the version 2.0. A couple more places I used the plugin in the master, the drum bus, just simple glue compression for the drum bus. I actually added a little transient, but other than that, it's pretty basic compression. So yeah, I'll play the drums and mute the plugin and then enable it, and you can hear the difference. So this is without clips. And then I'll turn the clips on. Brings everything a little bit closer up front, especially the snare. Then last thing, I also used clips on the piano here, just to control the dynamics, because I played the piano live. It had some volume boosts in places, and I didn't want to like control the individual MIDI note volumes, so I just slapped on clips in there just to control them. This is how the piano sounds like, by the way. And it's also actually using Delay Platinum Edition. If you haven't got the Platinum Edition yet, please consider supporting me and buy the premium version. It has some really cool additional modes and distortion settings as well. So yeah, anyway, clips. Without clips, that was actually previously it was with clips and now without it, and I will actually turn it on while the piano is playing so you can more clearly hear the difference. And so that was Clips version 2.0. Follow the link down in the description to get yours. If you already own the plugin, just log into your account and you can download this new version for no additional cost. And that pretty much wraps up this video. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Bye bye.